We turn to one of the most important economic developments of the Trump era, and the president's not tweeting about it. Paul Ryan's not discussing it in interviews, but it could be key both in the midterms and even the next election. I'm talking tonight about our deficit. You know, from Paul Ryan to Mitch McConnell to the Tea Party to MAGA, the GOP has long claimed that it is fiscally conservative and anti-deficit. In fact, you may remember when Obama was president, GOP leaders blasted the existence of any deficit as a fiscal and moral crisis.
They are in denial. They're in denial about the debt, $14.3 trillion. They're in denial about the deficit.
They didn't want to see a nation in debt. They wanted us to pay our bills in our time.
Yes, this level of debt is unsustainable, but it is also immoral.
Immoral. Keep that word in mind. That was, of course, Speaker John Boehner. He was ousted by a Tea Party movement that clamored about runaway spending, and the members of that movement may have cared a lot about it. We're talking tonight about what Republican leaders did about it. Consider that that deficit obsession was also embraced by Boehner's replacement, Paul Ryan, and the current Senate leader, Mitch McConnell.
So the only reason the unemployment extension hasn't passed is because our friends on the other side simply refuse to pass a bill that does not add to the debt. That's it.
What's reckless, Bob, is the $1.6 trillion deficit we're running this year.
He doubles the debt after his term in office and triples it by the end of his budget. He sends our debt on an upward trajectory that is completely unsustainable.
Paul Ryan talking about a president, the last one, sending us on an unsustainable deficit explosion. Now, the new president, Donald Trump, also echoed Paul Ryan when he said he wouldn't let that happen during his run for president.
Barack Obama has doubled during his fairly short period of years. He's doubled our national debt, doubled it.
So that's the record. It's all out in public. Republican politicians insisting they'd address this deficit problem if they got power. And here's what happened. New numbers out today show the budget deficit exploding to $779 billion in 2018 under Trump. That is a 6-year high. What you see on your screen gives lie to every promise you just heard on your screen. So what do they say about it? Well, Mitch McConnell was pressed, and he claims the real problem now is something else, not the new tax cuts, but the way we have a long-running safety net.
It's very disturbing, and it's driven by the three big entitlement programs that are very popular: Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid.
So that's the new message from Mitch McConnell and presumably the other Republican politicians. Don't worry about the fact that this is exactly what they said they wouldn't do. Blame something else. Now take a look. The big driver, the newest thing happening here, is, of course, the Trump tax cut. And you can see under Obama, the annual deficit, even with the social safety net, was going down. The blue is the deficit going down. And 2017 and 2018 especially, is it going back up under a red Republican president with big tax cuts. It's not until this year, as the Trump tax cut takes effect, that you see the real spike. And the problem is deeper than that. Republicans, they said these tax cuts would be for everyone, that it was a kind of an economic stimulus. Donald Trump even talked about that. But then look at the facts. When you see what Donald Trump promised right after the tax cut actually went through, right after signing it, we'll put this up on the screen. There he was, signing a lot of bills. And then he addressed his supporters at Mar-a-Lago and said, "You all just got richer." That was a moment of honesty from Donald Trump. They got richer, the people who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to be Mar-a-Lago members. That is why the tax cuts are pretty controversial. That's why they're not being talked about as much in the midterm races. And that's why everything you just saw tonight, Republican politicians telling everyone that deficits were bad under Obama, have been revealed. They are paying for this by giving money out to the richest people in America and reversing what they very well promised this whole time, that they would address deficits under a Republican president. Now it's out for everyone to see, and people can decide what, if anything, to do about it. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.